Let's rock. This will be fun.
So we are live. This is a Goat District MiLLY BiLLiE special. I have with me Chris Vacarro and Nelson Sousa. Anybody who plays high stakes, these guys don't really need much of an introduction. How you guys feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Long weekend in New York City. It was great catching up with everybody. We battled it out for a couple of days, and it was iron sharpening iron all weekend in New York.
Awesome. Well, let's get ready to rock.
Goat District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
So I appreciate you guys both coming on. Yeah, we just drafted in New York City this past weekend. I drafted 4 teams yesterday. I think, Nelson, you were at 4 yesterday?
I had, what did I have? 5 yesterday.
5. And Chris, you did the double auction on Friday and then drafted the Super, and then I'm sure you snuck a couple in yesterday as well.
Yeah, we had the early morning classic, that 14-team classic, and then I came home. I did my bullet, and I did a 10 p.m. prime time. So I had 3 back-to-back days, and we love it, man. Right? Don't we love it? We can't get enough drafting. There's not enough hours in the day right now to get in our drafts.
It's fantastic. This time of year is just like high stress, high excitement. You're trying to get them in right before the season. I mean, there's absolutely nothing better. And I really appreciate all the people I got to connect with live this weekend in New York City. Had a lot of kind words about the Goat District. I'd like to think that we are trying to help promote the best players in the industry and try to give a voice to them as much as we can. And we, we really value you guys listening to us. So Chris and Nelson are fantastic players, 2 of the sharpest minds around in high stakes, and they're also putting out tremendous content. Nelson, maybe you could tell people where they can find you and what you have planned for the season.
Yeah, so I'm at FTN Fantasy, and it's besides season long, it's a huge DFS site. Also sports betting advice. A lot of great talented individuals there at FTN Fantasy. But for me right now, I'm just getting ready for the season. So still drafting. A lot of subscribers still have drafts left over. So in the Discord chat, just talking about draft strategy, draft flow. Talking about particular players, whether to be on them or off of them. And then I actually this morning just got started on my Fab article. So it's called Nelson's Notebook, and it's basically just a Fab breakdown of targets, guys to pick up, and how much to bid on them, and things like that. So working on that because we have preseason waivers coming up.
We absolutely do, and don't remind me because I've got to sit down at a computer for maybe about 3 hours later tonight and try to get a little work in after the kids go to bed. Highly recommend Nelson's work. I split teams with Nelson. He's a friend of mine, but he is one of the sharpest people in the industry. And his waiver wire article, I write a waiver wire article. And I think I do a good job. But what Nelson does specifically is if you play in these high stakes formats, he is writing the waivers specifically for you. There's some correlation for the the home league guy. If Nelson puts a 50% next to a guy, absolutely unload on him. But if you play NFFC, FFWC, FFPC, or very, very high stakes deep formats, there's no better person around, I think, in the country for waivers than Nelson's notebook. And you're going to do some more pods this year as well, Nelson. How often are those dropping?
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that with Maddie Davis on a weekly basis. So we just got to get together and see what day is going to work best for us. And it's just going to be, week to week, just talking about the Sunday games and, the other games going on and what we noticed, stuff like that.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. And then we have Chris Vacarro, who is tremendous player. He's one of the innovators of the zero RB strategy. He took down major titles with it. He does tremendous work on The Athletic. He has a wonderful podcast with Nando Defino, and he also writes a weekly article that is just fire, where he really dives into the high stakes. Chris, maybe tell a little bit to the people about what to expect from you guys when you're dropping the pod this year, what it's going to be like, and then your written work.
Yeah, over at The Athletic, 4th year now. Gives me a nice platform to reach out to the people. I love it. I get to do my weekly podcast. Like you said, Theo, with Nando Defino. We have a good time. We're close friends outside of, the industry. We have been for a while now. So, it's just two friends chopping it up for an hour every week. Our podcast. We do it every Wednesday morning, and the show comes out, Wednesday afternoon. So, just in time for you, the people running their waivers on Wednesday night and setting their lineups for the following week. So that's every Wednesday. And then my article comes out every Thursday morning, just in time for the following week. Preview of the week ahead and a little bit of a look back for the prior week, things to come. So, yeah, that's where you could catch me all year long.
Awesome. So we had a chance to compete against Nelson and I split a team in the New York Super this past Friday night. We also split a team the following morning in the New York 14-team Super, which is a new format, which was very competitive as well. But the New York Super really, really hits different. I know you guys have been in this league a lot longer than I have. Maybe you could each share a little bit about the league and the importance that it has, not only for the NFFC, but for high-stakes football in general.
Want to take that one, Nelson? Or
I don't even know what to say. I'll let you go first because it's tough.
Yeah.
I'll let you describe it, and then I'll try to put it in my words too.
Well, I'll give it a little bit of a history. We've been doing this league for a while. I think maybe 2013, 2014 it started in New York to put together the Super League. There are leagues in the high stakes industry that are dollar amount more, but it just seemed like the best players on the East Coast would gravitate to this league since the beginning. And it just took on something of its own, through these years. And it's broadcast on Sirius XM every year, probably for the last 6 or 7 years. Andy Saxton does a great job putting it all together, really getting some hype behind it. And it's the best competition you can, find. Everybody comes back year in and year out for it. It's got now, I think, 5 Hall of Famers in the league. It's got, besides guys that are more than well deserving, such as you guys and Glenn Lowy. It's just the best drafters you can find, in my opinion. And we all do this every year in New York, and it's the highlight of the weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
I think it's got it's almost got like this home league, like a local league type of feel to it, just because of the camaraderie. Everybody knows each other. Everyone's, talking and very laid back. But then, like, when the clock goes on and that first pick is up, it's like it's the best players, you know, I think like on the East Coast that are like in that league, and it's like a grind. It's I haven't experienced anything like it. You know, once in a while you get in like a main event with online that is like made up of like 8 or 9 guys that are just, it's like brutal, where there's no value falling. Guys are reaching for their players that they like, so you know they don't fall. It's just and then there's strategy behind it, because
that's what I was going to just say.
Yeah, where if you have like 6 guys, like half the league going after wide receivers, because you know wide receiver dries up after a certain tier, there's a drop, and you have 6 of them doing it all at the same time. If you get caught with your pants down, where you take like 2 running backs and a tight end to start your draft, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like you could pick 2 very good running backs and a very good tight end, and it looks good on paper. But man, by the 7th round, you're scratching your head, like, you know, because you got to start 3 wide receivers. So you're scratching your head, just wondering, like, you know, how am I going to make this work? So that's my takeaway from it, is that it's like no other league. You really have to be like on your toes and on it. Like you can't be distracted with anything else.
Yeah. Nelson, you touched on something I was going to say also when you said strategy, and I'll take it a step further. This is the only league where, I mean, we all know where we want to set up KDS wise, but this is the only league, in my opinion, for me, that I sit down and strategize based on who's in the league, trying to figure out, okay, Mike Edelman's a 0 RB guy. I know he wants to go to the back end. I know this player, based on his drafts, what I've seen, wants to go in the front. A couple of these guys in the middle. Where do I want to try and position myself? Because I know in the 2nd round, this player and this player is going to want this guy and this guy. So I want to get on the outside. Just, there was 100 things going through my brain as I sat down to set up my KDS. And we'll get into all this as we go through the draft board. But this is the one draft you sit down, because there's no holes at the table. There's 12 sharp drafters, 12 of the best drafters there are, and you got to try and think about what their strategies are and how they like to usually play the game based on their history, based on what you've seen during the online championship season, and try and say, all right, this is the way I think I'm going to be able to build my best build from this position on the draft board based on where these guys are going to be sitting at the table. So there's so much that goes into it. Hopefully I didn't go too deep there, but
no, I think
those are things that go through my brain when I'm entering the New York Super.
That's funny that you mentioned that, as far as like, you know, because obviously you can set your KDS and where you want to draft from. And it brings the conversation that Theo and I had was, okay, where do we want to draft from? And we both agreed, let's just go to the middle, because there's a player there. There's a couple of players there that we don't mind starting off our draft with. And then from there, we'll just go with it. But the key was for Theo and I was, let's not go to the ends. Let's not go after like a McCaffrey or a Taylor, or go to the back end and see like what comes to us, because, you know, we didn't want to get caught up in like those runs when there's like a run out of position or whatever. We just wanted it to be right in the middle, where we, you know, potentially we could pick off someone that, you know, falls a little too far. But for the most part, we just felt like in the middle was like our comfort zone in that type of draft.
Yeah, and we figured
that's what I was going to say too. Same thing.
We figured we'd have a choice there, but let's get the board up so we can start talking about it. Because we draft. Actually, let me fix this, guys. Sorry. Maybe we get JD in here to fix the board real quick.
JD's the board master.
JD is definitely the board master.
There
Okay, JD helped out. Awesome. So can you guys see the board?
Yeah.
We can go full screen.
I have the board in front of me, so I'm good. Yeah.
Awesome. So anybody following along, Nelson and I are in the 7 hole. And like Nelson discussed, Nelson was spot on. We we considered Saquon Barkley when we set our KDS, and we considered Stephon Diggs. We also thought Nelson made the comment that someone's going to push Saquon Barkley up in this format, much higher than we see in regular NFFC leagues. And Nelson, as always, when it comes to all things fantasy, Nelson was correct, because Chris Vaccaro was drafted in the 5 hole and went with Saquon Barkley. Chris, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And you tweeted out a little note, Saquon no matter what. This is your flag plant. Talk about it.
That's exactly it, Theo. It's my flag plant. I'm all in this year. I own a ton of Barkley. I think it all comes together. It's the second year off of the major injury. I love what I see, all the video clips. I like how they're rebuilding the offensive line. Theo, I came on your show about a month ago, and you asked me about Saquon Barkley, and I didn't want to tip my hand too much at that time.
We specifically asked you, is he going to hop Eckler? Because he seemed like to have the steam, and we said maybe, Chris, 110, 109, and you're like, I don't think he's going to hop Eckler. Well, he hopped Eckler. He hopped Eckler in this one.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with Eckler this year. I mean, I've gotten some questions about why not Eckler over Barkley. I have Eckler as my 4th running back ranked. I have Barkley as my 3rd. And, I wanted to put myself right in that 5, 6, 7 range in this draft, guys. And you mentioned the 2 names that was going to go after. I would have been satisfied starting my draft right in that range with either Barkley or Diggs. And, that 5 spot usually is reserved for Kupp and Chase, right? But I said to myself, if Barkley is there at 5, which I assumed he would be for me, that's it. I'm not playing any games. This is the New York Super. That's my main guy this year, and that's who I'm going to bat with. If I lose this league, and I want to do it with my guys, and Barkley is my main guy this year. And I'm all in. So at 5, I knew all week long, as soon as I got that 5th spot, it was Barkley.
No, I love it. And it's get your guys, and it's setting your KDS in a place you knew you would get him. I think it would have been a little more of a risk if you went a little lower. And I respect you a lot for that. And we sort of made the same pick the next morning at the 106. So we're with you on that. But Nelson, we took Stephon Diggs. And this has been a guy that you've been drafting consistently this offseason. I know you've taken him many times over, and he's a guy that you've spoken extremely highly of. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Diggs. I love him this year. I took him in a draft with Billy Muzio last night as well from the 4 hole. So we're really aggressively getting him as well. What are your thoughts on Diggs and kind of his ceiling this season?
I think his ceiling is wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and I don't think that's like too far fetched, considering he's tied to, arguably the best quarterback in the league, and it's a pass heavy system, and he's got now a guy in Gabe Davis that I like that, he's starting to develop, and just to keep defenses honest and not roll coverage so much over to Diggs. I know last year there's probably some people that are down on him a little bit, feeling that he had an off year, and he ended up having when you look at the stats, it's a really good year for someone that you kind of were disappointed in a little bit. But he also had suffered an injury during the season where he was a little banged up there for a little while. I'm not sure if that affected him or whatever, but I just think he's like a rock solid, guy to, foundation piece in the first round to start your draft with.
Yeah.
I put him right up there with, Jefferson's elite. Cooper Kupp had a monster season, and Chase obviously great year, but like I put Diggs right up there with him.
Yeah, and I think especially in the NFFC format, when you pass on Diggs, there's a chance that there's a real wide receiver run where you might not have a guy that you think could hit that wide receiver 1 overall outcome. So I think taking him it's somewhat of a safe approach. It kind of keeps you wide open for what you could do in the second round.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's I'm really high on him. And maybe I need to cool it a little bit this next week, because I now am very, very invested in Saquon. I mean, in Stephon Diggs. The rest of the first round kind of goes as expected. We see Michael Edelman at the turn go Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb. Maybe Adams went a little bit lower in this league than we've seen the rest of the weekend. And then Nelson, we came back around when we went with Michael Pittman. We'd also considered Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown there. Maybe you could talk about your thoughts on that pick and what it did for us structurally, and your expectations for Pittman.
I think it was actually, we were thinking Pittman or Tyreek, but we gave some thought to Joe Mixon also, and just starting off balance. But I think really what we were debating was behind us, other than Edelman, it started off running back heavy. So if you look, teams 8 through 11 started with 2 running backs. So we know, with this being third round reversal, okay, those teams are going to pick before us in the third round, and 100%, because most of those guys, all of those guys know what they're doing in the back end. They're going to go wide receiver. So that's really what it came down to, was that, let's just go with Pittman, start off with 2 wide receivers, because, the teams, teams 1 through 6, they were going to take some wide receivers. And then, like I said, the back half there, we're going to go wide receiver. And then we could, potentially get a running back to fall to us, which we did. Or we could just continue that run and take a third wide receiver. I was comfortable, going that route.
Yeah, and yeah. I think that like having Pittman with Diggs, gives us potential for 2 top 5 wide receivers this year, which could really be a leg up. Chris, you planted kind of another flag. You went with Cortland Sutton, and you went with Sutton ahead of Tyreek Hill, ahead of A.J. Brown, and ahead of Deebo Samuel, 3 guys that often go ahead of him in these NFFC formats. Maybe what propelled you to go Sutton there? And was it like a Sutton no matter what, or did you give consideration to anybody around him?
No, it definitely did. I was in that area right there, 20th overall. I was hoping as the draft started, but I knew, how high you guys are on Pittman, that I probably wasn't going to get him. That would have been my ideal start, was Barkley and Pittman out of that range. But I just, Sutton, just like we talked about with Saquon earlier, Sutton's my guy. That's my flag plant this year. I do like A.J. Brown a lot. I am not in on Tyreek Hill, so Hill wasn't an option for me. So once you guys come around and take Pittman, it's between Sutton and A.J. Brown for me in that area. And in this league, like I said, it's a standalone league. I'm taking my guy. I'm not going down with anybody else. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But, Barkley, Sutton, that's my top running back, top receiver, that I'm pushing up. And that's the way I started the draft. I think you guys do a great job there with, and anybody that starts off in that mid rounds, in the middle of the first round with a wide receiver. And I think that's what we're seeing in drafts this whole weekend. And what we'll see going forward is you can adjust off the big time receiver, whether it's Chase or Diggs or Devontae in that 8, 9, 10 range, or Lamb. That second round from the 13th overall pick to 19th overall, you can always get that solid bell cow back. So you could go either which way, or if you want to go receiver, if a Pittman, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, if those are your guys, you could go receiver. It just makes it a little tougher when you start off with a running back. Then you kind of, it's tough to pull off a running back from the back end, in my opinion, right now. So, and just to touch on Edelman real quick, he hit the nuts, in my opinion, at the back end, because you don't see Adams last until 12 in a lot of these drafts. So for him in this league to pull off Adams and Lamb, that's a pretty special start for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the Swift going where he went, and then Glenn being big on Najee Harris this weekend kind of allowed for Adams to slip. Yeah. And I also think the fact that Eckler slipped back also maybe did that, because I wonder if Eddie would have gone Adams at the 8 over Eckler if he had that, if Eckler wasn't there. So that was interesting. And I really like what Michael did with Kyle Pitts as well. He just kept the foot on the gas. But when we came around to our pick, Nelson, we were happy to see Travis Etienne available. We could have gone with another wide receiver, but he kind of stood out there as a guy with a lot of upside. We really like the talent and his potential as a receiving back in that backfield as well. Do you think the community is kind of maybe the last few weeks there's been a little less steam on Etienne, and do you think it's incorrect?
I'm not going to say it's incorrect, but I definitely think that I've seen enough drafts now that you might get in a draft with one or two guys that are high on Etienne and they'll push him up to the second round. But for the most part, he's been kind of living in the third round. I like it, because I'm high on Etienne. So I feel like I can, build some teams from the back end, possibly starting 2 wide receivers and then Etienne. As far as being incorrect or correct, we're going to find out. But I think it has a lot to do with, James Robinson and the coach saying that he's going to be ready for week 1. So I think a lot of people are looking at it as it potentially could be a committee backfield there. And I just think that, the kid has enough talent that he's a better player than James Robinson, and he's, good in the passing game and everything. And, during the preseason, he looked pretty dynamic with some of his runs. And I like too that some of the runs, not everything was designed outside. A couple of his runs were in between the tackles, and he looked good doing it. So that's, I think that he's a fine pick there. I think when you push him up to the second round and then to want to be able to have some exposure to him and having to push him up makes it a little trickier, because you got to be on the front end unless you want to just jump him over everybody on the back end. I think being in the third round is nice right now.
Yeah, and I think structurally he made a ton of sense after our wide receiver start. I think, in the morning when we were talking, we absolutely would have taken a Diggs, Pittman, Etienne start. So I was happy with that. Chris, you went DJ Moore, and then we see, basically the third round and the fourth round, the wide receivers get really cleaned up. Were you happy to get DJ Moore right there?
Oh, yeah, thrilled. I would have been happy with DJ Moore, Allen Robinson there. And that's just part of being where you are on the board. I'm comfortable starting off with the running back at 5 because I know I'm set up nicely. I'm going to get a receiver, a solid number 2 receiver and a solid number 3 receiver at 32 and 41 overall, just based on how the board shakes up right now. It's when you're at the back end in that 9 through 12 range that you're holding on for dear life, especially in a league full of sharks where the third and fourth round, the turn is going to be all yellow. And this didn't change. I think we all caught a little bit of a break in terms of, having the yellow drop a little more to us based on Saxton's turn at the 3-4 turn. You're seeing Chubb and Connor fall a little bit more, but he takes 2 running backs there. And for all of us that are looking to build heavy receivers in these 3, 4, and 5 rounds, we take a little bit of a deep breath right there. We say, okay, now we could get somebody. DJ Moore, Allen Robinson right there is a perfect number 2 for my build in that third round. And then coming around, I land my guy in the mid-4th in Bateman. So I know based on my build that I was starting 1 running back, and, we'll get into it as we go through these rounds, but I really wanted to start 4 receivers right after that in the 2nd through 5th rounds and possibly even the 6th round and try and hit on my RB2 a little later on. But, you can never, these drafts change by the pick. And, I had to adjust my strategy after these 2 rounds. But I was really, really happy after I got my guy Sutton to get Moore and Bateman as my 2 and 3. The same way I'm sure you guys were happy with your 3rd and 4th rounds because you guys had a really solid first 4 rounds as well.
Yeah, it goes DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson. Then Gabe Davis sneaks into the third round. He's sort of been living in this range all weekend long. He's got a lot of steam. Then we see Andy Saxon go running back. For me, if he wants to go running back there, I think I would have gone with one of them, not both of them, because I think it was hard to cover up at wide receiver. Then Waddle, ARSB to Billy Wazowski. Deontay Johnson goes to Zuka. And then it comes back around and you get Rashad Bateman. I thought that was a great pick, Chris. I think we would have taken him if he was there. You were happy to get Bateman? Is there somebody you wish would have fallen to you instead of him?
No, as a matter of fact, I was thrilled with that turn because I'm not in on any of those guys right before me. I'm not in on Waddle. I'm not in on St. Brown, and I'm not in on Deontay Johnson. So when that turn came, I'm holding my breath because I know Chris Eibel right next to me was crushed. Bateman was his guy. I'll assume you guys like Bateman as well. Based on seeing a lot of your drafts, I know that Bateman's a guy, and that was my pick. If I could have planned out my first 4 rounds, I said that was it right there. To a T.
Yeah, it definitely looks great. And then you were able to correlate him a little later with Lamar Jackson, which is also a very nice pick. Nelson, we went Hollywood Brown. Maybe talk a little bit about Hollywood Brown and how it potentially influenced our next pick as well.
I think Hollywood Brown was kind of like the next guy in our rankings. He's tied to a good quarterback, good offense, should start off the year with a lot of targets, with Hopkins being out for the first 6 weeks. And I'm not really, a McLaren guy. I know you're not either. And then, the rest of the guys, I just think that he kind of stuck out to us. And then when it came back around, it's funny just the way how it worked, but when it came back around, we didn't want Kirk with ETN just to have 2 Jacksonville Jaguars together on the same team. I don't mind doing that with 2 players from like elite offenses, but like you and I talked at the draft table, it's kind of like, hey, Jacksonville's not in that category just yet, so let's not do that. And we went Hopkins with the thought that, we'll just go Kyler Murray and just make this an Arizona stack because you and I are both high on Murray. And when it got to our 6th pick, I'm going a little ahead, but that was kind of like the whole strategy behind it. And then we didn't pull it off. And it was one of those things where you're trying to read the room and you're trying to figure out, okay, we want to get our RB2, and because it is a confined league. So that's the other thought too, was you got to change your strategy a little bit from a tournament style drafting to, confined league. And we don't have to be so aggressive. We can be a little bit more conservative. And that was the deal was, okay, we still have a couple of quarterbacks on the board. Is there a chance that, some of these teams, like the teams that started running back heavy, I didn't figure them to take a quarterback, especially with Lowy already having Josh Allen, and Edelman had started wide receiver heavy. And I thought there was a chance that he would try to go and take 2 running backs there at that turn. And since he had Pitts already, so it's like you go 0 running back, you take Pitts, it's hard to take an elite quarterback with that type of build. So I was thinking, what? He might go 2 running backs. So let's go ahead and take Chase Edmonds, who we both like a lot, and just gamble, take the chance that Murray comes back. And he has, like in a lot of prime times, Murray has been there in the 7th round in the middle. So that was kind of like the strategy of, let's see if we can finesse him to the 7th round, but let's get our RB2.
Yeah, and it was a difficult one, especially because we were in on, Brown and Hopkins. But I think it's kind of like, we dared Edelman to kind of make the choice, and he did. He took Kyler Murray, but it wasn't the end of the world because we were also really high on Jalen Hurts, who we will come back to. We're reaching 1240, and Nelson and I draft at 1 o'clock in an ultimate. So, Chris, why don't we go ahead and you can could you go through maybe the first 10 rounds and kind of talk about your guys and the team you built, and then Nelson will do the same.
Yeah, let's do that. So we leave off at Bateman. Now, just real quick, when I draft a team like Sutton in the second, Bateman in the fourth, and you guys take Hollywood Brown, like I said, those are three of my favorite. Well, Bateman and Brown are a couple of my favorites because it sets up a couple rounds later. I have an option to go with a Lamar to hook up with Bateman. I have an option to go with Kyler to hook up with Hollywood Brown, and I'm in on Russ. So when I take Sutton or a Judy in the fourth, that's my other quarterback I can pair up. So when I'm taking these three favorite receivers of mine in that range, I always have the option a couple rounds later to hook them up with quarterbacks I like. So we get to that fifth round, guys, and we come around and I have my three receivers in my bag, right? And I want to take, I'm holding my breath for Christian Kirk, okay, as a 4. Am I obsessed with Christian Kirk? No. But I think Christian Kirk is a really solid number 4 receiver that I could take on this type of build. He goes right before me, and I'm not in love with any of these receivers after, or at least I think I could snatch up one of them on the comeback. So I immediately flip to the last big running back of a tier that I have in my rankings, and that's A.J. Dillon. So I say to myself, okay, let's flip it to A.J. Dillon. Let's pair him with Barkley, and I have a nice 1-2 combo. With the three receivers locked up. And after that, I come back around and again, it's the same thing at the quarterback position. I have Lamar as a top 3 ranked quarterback, and in a standalone league, I want the elite quarterback even more. And then the caveat again is I have Bateman, so I have a hookup there. I take Lamar, which I think was, other than Murray and Hurts, the last of, a bigger top 5, top 6 tier. And I'm happy with the team so far. I think this is where the strategy really started playing in my build, was these 2 rounds. And then when you come all the way back around and you look through this draft, I know we had talked about it the night of the draft, but 7th round, this is where it starts to get a little bit in your head now with these drafts that we see, the prime times and everything. This is when the cliffs really starts to fall off at the wide receiver position. I have a solid RB2 in Dillon. I have my elite quarterback, and I have a choice with Darren Waller on the board to go an elite tight end. But I say to myself, all right, I see the way these drafts are playing out. What's left at the receiver position? And Chris Olave, who would be the last receiver in my book to be a solid flex play in wide receiver 4, I don't want to risk losing him. And he's going in these, early 80s now. We saw it all weekend long. So if I take Darren Waller, I say to myself, I'm not going to like my 4th wide receiver in this build. So what I do is I make that decision to pass on the top 5 elite tight end in Waller and try and build out my wide receiver room. And that's what I did with these next 2 picks with Olave and Nico Collins, who I might have moved up a little bit, but I wanted to look at my team at the end of the day and say, okay, I have a solid 4th and 5th receiver that I could play with each week, and then just try and punt the tight end position and aim for a Cole Kmet, which was my target, who I have as a top 10 tight end. And I thought I could move him up a little bit and land him and be happy with the team. And that's what I did here.
No, I really like your build a lot. It's difficult to say like who has the best build because none of them look as good as you see in like some prime times because it's so well drafted. But I really like what you did. I love the Olave pick, and I like your we're not really going to go into the next round so much. We don't really have the time, but I really love your Michael Carter pick and your upside pick of Alec Pierce, especially where you took him right after Paris Campbell to Chris Eibel, which was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Nelson, I love our Chase Edmonds pick, even though we didn't get Kyler Murray. I think Edmonds gives us potential top 15 running back this year. to go with ETN, and it worked pretty well for our structure. But we came back and we were able to get Jalen Hurts, and then we were able to pair him up with Dallas Goedert. Maybe you could your expectations for both of those guys briefly.
Yeah, I mean, Goddard hasn't put up the numbers that a Waller or Kittle have put up, but I have him like right there in that tier for those tight ends. So I think he's got a lot of upside with Zach Ertz gone. They've got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on the outside. It's going to be tough for teams to really like focus on Goddard. So I feel like he's going to be running free this year. So he's like that. He's that one guy that I think goes like in the mid range of tight ends that has the potential this year to like move way up. And, you know, at the end of the season, we're talking about him in the same category as like a Kelsey, Andrews, and Pitts.
Yeah, I think he's the last tight end drafted that has a chance at tight end 1 overall. It's a lot of things are gonna have to break his way, but he's a tremendously talented guy. And then Nelson, you've been drafting Darrell Henderson and talking about him a lot. Chris, you have as well. Maybe talk a little bit about that pick. And then how high do we think Darrell Henderson will be drafted after the Thursday night game, guys?
You want to go, Chris, or me?
You go first.
Nelson, that's your guy, my man.
Yeah,
so you gotta. That's on you.
Yeah. You know, I have a feeling that, you know, Henderson's going to be more involved than most people think. And I'm trying to acquire him in drafts prior to the Thursday night game, because I think after the Thursday night game, there's, you know, a possibility of whether what he shows you on the field or his production, he could move up in drafts come Friday and Saturday. So, you know, it's a little bit of a gamble. It could also be a total faceplant where, you know, Thursday comes and he doesn't do much against the Buffalo defense and he actually becomes cheaper in drafts. But I just think that he's going to be more involved than people think. I think Akers,
Do you see it as a 50-50 split, Nelson? Is that how you're thinking this out with your Henderson? Because, you know, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you personally was, you know, you are the Henderson guy at this point after the New York City drafts. That is your guy. You've taken him everywhere. I think I stole him once on you guys in the Classic. That was a team that I built with Akers, who I'll touch on in a second. But is that how you're seeing it, Nelson? You think it maybe is like a 50-50 split that we see to open the season?
I think 50-50 split with Henderson handling the passing down work.
Okay. Now, to follow up, and I know we're pressed for time, Theo, but I am of the opinion that I think the Cam Akers hate has gone way too far, and that, you know, we have to remember in all of July and early August, Cam Akers was a late third round pick, early fourth round pick. And then, you know, the news comes that he's going to miss out on a couple of weeks, and this guy falls into the 8th and 9th rounds of drafts. And I don't know if the industry as a whole and even us high stakes drafters has been able to replace this guy correctly on draft boards right now, even as these main events and supers and ultimates have started, because we're still seeing him fall into the 7th, 8th, and 9th rounds, and he's back at practice. So what's changed in the last month to make this guy go from a 3rd rounder to an 8th rounder? I just see some value right now in Cam Akers. That's
an interesting question. I think just him being out for those couple of weeks, because it was like 2+ weeks he was out with a hamstring injury. So I think that pumped the brakes a little bit on, you know, people being pro Cam Akers. And then even with him back to practice, I think why he's falling in drafts, and it depends on the draft, because I see him sometimes go in the 5th round. But I see him like you know, he'll go in the 7th round. I think people just it's the uncertainty. So they just don't know what to do with Akers. So they're on the clock, and it's like Akers is there and they haven't seen him play. The last time they saw him play, he didn't look good, you know, in the playoffs. He was injured. And I think that's what it is. Like, it's just uncertainty, and they just let him go and pass on him.
I also think that there has been a rise with A.J. Dillon, Chase Edmonds, Damian Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, and those guys have the juice right now, and they're rising at the same time that J.K. Dobbins, Elijah Mitchell, Antonio Gibson's a little different, but he's, he fell as well, and then Cam Akers. So I think that it's almost like a replacement level into the dead zone to like the lower part of the dead zone. Yeah. So I think some of those guys having juice did the same thing.
I mean, even look at this draft in our New York Super, 71 overall. He almost makes it to the 8th round, and Lowy scoops him up right before the turn there, which I'm sure Edelman was dying to get his hands and take a shot on a Cam Akers with the build that he has. I mean, that's just perfect. If you could come into, if you could come into that turn and take a shot on a Cam Akers who could touch the ball 15, 20 times a game in a good offense, I'm sure he was one pick away from completing that dream. I just think the hate's gone a little too far, and as an industry, maybe we haven't been able to replace this guy correctly.
Well, we're going to know a lot more about the Los Angeles backfield and the Buffalo backfield after Thursday night's game. I think it'll be very tilting for a lot of drafters. Mm-hmm. But we're going to wrap this one up, and we're actually going to have Chris's partner, Nando DeFino, is going to be joining JD on Wednesday night at 8:15 for the first of many Goat District tailgates, where they're going to preview the weekend's games, preview the Thursday night game, and maybe each make a couple of bold predictions on the season. I thank you both a lot for your time. I don't mean for such a short wrap up, but Nelson and I are ready to go back at it in 7 minutes.
Drafting always comes first, boys.
Yeah, 100%. Chris, I hope you run pure for the rest of your drafts. And Nelson, I hope we run really pure in about 7 minutes. Enjoy your holiday, everyone. And
good luck, guys.
Take care.
All right.